Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next edition of the R Squared podcast. We are now deep into the NFL season, one game and two games into the college football season. You can see two Bengals fans here ready to talk about some football this past weekend and some news out of Southern California. So, Rahul, why don't you kick it off? What happened in California this week in college football?
So after USC lost to Stanford over the weekend, Clay Hilton, the head coach of USC, was fired. And what's interesting is the candidates that are coming up to replace him. One is first was Urban Meyer, but that guy shut down really quickly during a Jag press conference. Two was Eric Bieniemy, the OC of Kansas City Chiefs, which may or may not work. And right now, the hottest rumor is James Franklin of Penn State. Apparently, they both mutual interest both ways. But the problem is, whoever takes over, whether it be someone from the NFL or college, they can't do anything this year. They're stuck with the players they are stuck with. They're stuck with the coaching staff. So would it be wise for anyone to take the job right now, or should UST just have an interim coach and look and start to search after the college football season is over? Because it's not the NFL. You just can't go and trade for players or pick up free agents, and you're stuck with the coaching staff you have. You just can't go fire, sort of get rid of your coaching staff who you replace him with. So it's a difficult position. And the question is can Eric Bieniemy recruit like he needs to compete against UCLA, Oregon, and other schools in the Pac-12 and the college football. So that's yet to be seen. But this developing story, as things break, will keep you informed and up to date. Now let's talk about this past week's NFL action and what's yet to come. Go ahead, Robbie.
Yeah. For sure. And, I would go back to USC and who they might hire. I was listening to Keyshawn and Jay Will and them on ESPN radio this past week. When they got Helton back in whatever it was, 2013, 14, the program was in disarray and they had to get some stability. That's kind of what Keyshawn was saying. And, nobody really knows yet what happened this past week on why they would fire the coach after just 2 weeks in. But you got to think that one thing that USC is doing is saying, hey, look, there's this big splash in the SEC, right? Texas and Oklahoma's going there. The Big 12 finally got what they wanted. Well, not what they wanted, but they rebounded a little bit. They got University of Cincinnati, and they're gonna have a conference again.
Right,
Pac-10's getting better. Oregon just beat Ohio State. You
right.
know,
Which
yeah,
as a Ohio State fan, I saw coming just because Ohio State's defense is just not where it should be. I'm not saying it's atrocious. They still made a game of it, but not where Ohio State fans and the Ohio State University are used to seeing what a defense is. Then again, they can't really go pick up another defense coordinator. There's rumors saying that they want to replace Kerry Combs with X, Y, and Z, but they don't know the personnel, they don't know the scheme, and they just can't go and get new players. So either Kerry Combs will get better, or there's something that Ryan Day will stick with until this season where he can go get a Mark D'Antonio or someone someone high profile defense coordinator to come to Ohio State.
yeah, absolutely. So USC is trying to make a splash,
Right.
and the timing of it I think is a little bit suspect. Maybe something personal happened, but they are going to make a splash. Sark is now at Texas, so they need. They're going to get either Bieniemy, or they might even if Luke Fickle does leave UC, that'd be a great hire. But they want something to be able to say, hey, look, all of the talent in Southern California. You need to stop going to Texas, stop going to Alabama, stop going to the SEC,
Right.
stay home, and they want to be back. And again, I think the first game of the season or second game, not sure
Right.
that was the best route, but they're not just going to get a random offensive coordinator. James Franklin at Penn State would be an interesting choice. He's been there a little while, and Ohio State keeps on winning the Big Ten, and they're usually the second best team in the Big Ten year in year out. They had a nice loss to the University of Kentucky in the Outback Bowl a couple years ago with Benny Snell.
Right.
And yeah, this weekend, James Franklin, if he's talking to USC, he's got a huge game on Saturday night under the lights. 100,000 kids are going to be wearing white and wearing the white pom poms. It's a Saturday night game on ABC versus Auburn, and
Yeah.
that's a game that would rarely happen. So that'll be exciting. We are a fantasy football platform. Okay, we will be having an app. We'll be having a new way of doing fantasy football coming to you live fall of 2022. So with that being said, it's our responsibility to give you some picks for the skill position players out there. We're still not going to tell you exactly what's going on with our platform, how it's different, how it's better, but everybody will soon find out. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you guys some picks for this upcoming weekend. Some obvious, some not. Okay. What we're going to do is not going to give you. So for wide receivers, I'm not going to give you DeAndre Hopkins. To me, he's the best wide receiver in the NFL.
Right.
Okay. I'm not going to tell you that. Quarterbacks, I'm not going to give you earth-shattering news and tell you all about Patrick Mahomes. Everybody knows Patrick Mahomes is probably the best quarterback, especially for fantasy out there. Running backs, I'm not going to talk about Derrick Henry. I'm not going to talk about Dalvin Cook. I'm not going to talk about Alvin Kamara. I'm not going to talk about Run CMC. Anybody who didn't pick him in your first two picks is crazy, like I said last week. So moving on past the top two or three obvious choices, and if you have somebody else, either in a standard league format or in a daily fantasy format, or one of those, those gambling sites that not can't say their name. These might be some good options for you. All right. So skill positions. I'm going to start out with running backs. Okay. Just going to talk about three today. All right. Again, not Alvin Kamara, not the top guys, but hey, this guy should be listed as the top guy. Kind of tired of the nationwide pundits saying that Joe Burrow is surrounded by nothing. If you listen to any of the interviews this past weekend on all the major networks, it's praising Joe Burrow left and right, which is fantastic. He's a leader. He came back from injuries. But look, he does have a solid team around him. I understand that it's only one game in. Joe Mixon is a stud. Joe Mixon has all the talent in the world. Okay? You can't be an NFL running back, get 33 touches, get 150 yards, and be a slouch. Okay? This
Right.
guy is physical. He's athletic. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's willing to block. If I was willing to start an organization, I understand the situation of what happened in Oklahoma. We were past that. Um, Football wise, fantasy wise, 33 touches, 150 yards last game. This week he faces against a tough Bears team in Chicago. A little bit different than opening weekend at home, but guess what? The Burrow scheme is to kind of play it safe. Mixon's going to have the same amount of touches, and he's going to have about the same amount of yards. And the Vikings defense is kind of underrated. Bengals just might be better than a lot of people think, you know? So if
And
you
the
don't have
Bears
C, go ahead.
and the Bears defense is run defense is actually weaker than the Vikings run defense. So we'll see what happens.
Yep, absolutely. So again, if you don't have CMC, you don't have Kamara, you don't have Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, excellent options. I predict 33 touches, about 5 catches, 150 to 160 yards total offense this
Yep.
upcoming weekend against the Bears. Staying in the same game, underrated running back David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears.
Yep.
Okay. 108 yards against Aaron Donald and the Rams last week. The Rams, they're built for getting to the Super Bowl. And he still had 108 yards. Okay. Andy Dalton is not going to lead you to the playoffs. Justin Fields might if they actually give him playing time. Bengals defense played abnormally well. And I think that Bengals defense is underrated. With that being said, they still can give up over 100 yards to David Montgomery. I predict not as high of a touch count as Joe Mixon. I mean, that was absurd. But I'm
Right.
thinking 20, 22 touches, 108, 110 yards again versus the Bengals. Okay. So it's staying in that same game. Staying in the same division as the Bengals, my third pick for somebody who you should pick up. other than the top candidates, Joe Mixon and David Montgomery. This might be one of the top running backs in the NFL anyway. We're talking about Nick Chubb, Cleveland Browns.
Right.
Last week, 83 yards versus a Super Bowl candidate team against the Chiefs. You know, guess who they're playing, Rahul? Have you looked it up? They're at home against the
Right.
Texans.
Yep.
Texans beat a college team last week. Texans will everybody will see what the Texans are made of this week. Hey, I got respect for Tyrod Taylor, but it's Nick Chubb will have about 120 yards. 120 yards, about 25 touches. Okay. Um, and I predict Joe Mixon, 2 touchdowns, David Montgomery, one touchdown, Nick Chubb, 1 touchdown, 120 yards. So that's it from our running backs, other than your top candidates. All right. Don't worry,
Agree.
folks. We all have kids.
Yeah.
Um, all right.
Sorry
Any
about that.
feedback? No problem,
Um.
Ro. Same thing happens to me. Any feedback on your side on any running back predictions?
Okay, for Montgomery, I agree, but the Bengals held Dalvin Cook to less than 100 yards. The Bengals
Yeah.
defense. So we'll see. And especially if that Andy Dalton as quarterback, that may spell bad news for Montgomery. If Justin Fields, I could see them not crowding line just because Justin Fields is runner and he can he can so they might play a little bit off compared to if Andy Dalton as quarterback. Nick Chubb, I think Houston Texans are underrated. I actually picked them last week to win in my Survivor,
Oh,
in my
cool.
fantasy Survivor. Um, the Browns will win, but I don't think it'll be as easy as people predict.
Yeah, I think Tyrod Taylor's underrated. And
Yeah,
I think that they got some good wide receivers and things like that, but they did go up against a coach who's probably already had USC calling them. And, they just don't have the right personnel. So Jacksonville's a college team, in my opinion. But I got all the respect in the world for Tyrod Taylor. I'm going to move on now to wide receivers. Okay. So, in my opinion, I'm going to be talking about anybody in the tier of, you know, 3 or 4, top 3 to 10, 11 wide receivers out there. We're not going to go after DeAndre Hopkins, folks, because,
right,
I think he's the best wide receiver in the NFL. So here's some other options for you. I'm going to begin with, and I think this guy's a top 3 or 4 talent, is Keenan Allen out of the San Diego Chargers.
agree.
Against the Washington football team, Raul, last week, he had 13 targets and about 100 yards. Okay.
Yep,
Washington kind of fell on its face, but Washington, as you know, came into this season as priding themselves on their defense. The
yep,
Washington football team had a tough defense. He still had 13 targets, over 100 yards. I think my prediction this weekend, 13 targets, 120 yards. Keenan Allen is their number one option with San Diego. Justin Herbert, he's got a cannon for an arm, and I don't really trust Mike Williams that much. So Keenan Allen, big, 13 targets, 120 yards. I'm going to go back to the Bengals. Look, we're homers. I get it. But hey, we're here to help you also, right? If you go out to anybody in LA or New York who actually knows what they're talking about, Dallas, whatever, and they said, hey, I'm going to pick Joe Mixon for my fantasy football team. If they say that you're dumb, then you just need to tell them that they're dumb. Mixon, great pick. Here you go. If you want, as your second wide receiver, if you want touchdown scored, okay, um, Jamar Chase has scored a touchdown with Joe Burrow, they said, in 7 of the last 8 games he's played with him, right?
yep,
50-yard touchdown, his first game in the NFL. Okay. And it looks like Tyler Boyd is the odd man out. I think Tyler Boyd is phenomenal, but he is not going to be getting as much touches. I think if you want somebody as your second wide receiver, you get Jamar Chase, you're going to get a touchdown out of him this weekend. I predict maybe like 7 targets, 70 yards, 1 touchdown. Staying on the Bengals, I think he's going to score again. T. Higgins is great. T. Higgins might be the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL, in my opinion. And I look for T. Higgins to go wild on the Bears this weekend. I predict over 10 catches, maybe 12 catches, 110 yards, one score. I think he's great. And I think that the Bengals offense is just underrated. Look, I know we're homers, but you got to believe it. Jamar Chase will score and T. Higgins will score. You got one more option for everybody out there, and that's Cooper Kupp. Okay. And I think that Matthew Stafford, some people didn't really think that he might not be that much better than the previous option there with the LA Rams. I think he's a great option, and I think he's gelling well with the coach. And I think Kupp's his number one target, him and Robert Woods. And Kupp last week against the Bears, tough Bears defense, 10 targets, over 100 yards. This week he gets the nice Indianapolis Colts, who could have a top three pick in the next year's NFL draft. I think he's going to get 15 targets, 120 yards, and one touchdown. So to recap, wide receivers, if you don't, other than the top tier ones such as DeAndre Hopkins, you can't go wrong if you want to get a touchdown. You're going to get Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen is a very safe pick for you guys this weekend, and so is Cooper Kupp. Any feedback, Rahul?
Keenan Allen, I agree with because they are playing the Giants, and the Giants haven't showed much from the game last week. With Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I have to agree with you. I think Tyler Boyd will be the one hauling the catches and touchdowns this week, just because he didn't do much in the last game, and I think the Bears are gonna forget about him, and he will step up, and I think he'll lead the Bengals as leading receiver this Sunday.
And there's something about Burrow and Jamar Chase where I think they're just best friends. And he begged the organization to be able to draft him. I think Tyler Boyd is, again, one of the most underrated wide receivers. Look at the last second play he had against the Buffalo Bills, or not against the Ravens
Yeah.
3 or 4 years ago to get the Buffalo Bills into the playoffs. Good
I,
pick as far as Boyd stepping in front of Higgins, but in case, especially if Higgins is a little bit you know, sidelined or anything from the dehydration he had this past weekend. But yeah, Boyd's a good pick as well.
well, the reason I picked Boyd is because I think Joe Burrow sure has connection with Chase, but I think he's smart enough to throw to the receiver that's the most open, like Uzama was in the last play, in the last game, and I think Boyd will just get open because I think they'll forget about him with the other two big names that showed up this Sunday. And I agree with Cooper Cup. He will have a big day because for the Rams, I believe Matthew Stafford has improved that team a lot. I think that's what they're missing. Jared Goff was okay, but Matthew Stafford is almost a tier one quarterback, and I think he'll become a tier one quarterback with the Rams because they play the Colts, and the Colts have issues. So I think all three or four of the receivers you mentioned will have big weekends, and they will do good for their teams this upcoming Sunday.
And if you guys have a Survivor League, I'll tell you right now, my pick would be the Rams over the Colts. I think that's almost a shoe-in, and I have to look again on who's playing the Jags, but I think they're a little bit of a mess. I do like the Browns over the Texans as well. Going to move on towards quarterbacks. Okay, your other skill position. I'm not going to talk about tight ends today. All right, with the running
Browns
theme,
against Jets.
it's the Broncos.
Yeah, but I actually picked them
Broncos.
for Survivor pick this week too.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, I do like their first pick with that cornerback out of the University of Alabama, and I think and Teddy Bridgewater. I think he's a safe pick there for quarterback for the Broncos, but not for fantasy. So going back to fantasy here, quarterbacks. We're not going to talk about Patrick Mahomes. If you have Mahomes, start him. We're not talking about Patrick Mahomes. He's the best there is in the NFL. Not going to talk about Brady. Brady has a resurrection right now, and you know, I think Brady's going to kill it too. 4 or 5 touchdowns can happen. We're not
Yep.
talking about either one of those. Here's some other guys. Okay, we just talked about Stafford. I'm going to talk about him again. He's part of my three on the second cuff. Again, Colts. They're in a rebuilding phase, in my opinion. I don't. I think Carson Wentz is the wrong choice right now, and I think Stafford is just going to try to pile on them big time.
I
And
agree.
I predict over 26 passing attempts, over 400 yards. I predict 4 touchdowns. I think Stafford goes big this weekend. Their running game is what's lacking, so he's just going to throw it all over the field. And Cup, we talked about earlier, he's going to receive a lion's share of the. Get see what I did there? The lion's share. Uh,
Yes.
he's going to get a lion's share of the catches there, but I think Stafford big, 400 yards, 3 TDs. Now, who went crazy on the Colts last week? Russell Wilson. Okay. This isn't earth shattering. You got to pick Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's fantastic. And this week, they played against the Titans team, kind of underwhelmed last week.
Yeah.
Kind of disappointed with the Titans last week. Somehow Chandler Jones ended up with 5 sacks, I believe. So Russell Wilson, 3 TDs. I think he goes big against the Titans. uh, 300 yards, 3 TDs. Tyler Lockett gonna go crazy again,
DK Metcalf.
and DK Metcalf. Yep, and a host of other wide receivers. And look, here's my wild card of the day. Now, besides some of the Bengals wide receivers who are not ever mentioned in the top tier, so far I mentioned people that would always say, hey, they're probably in the range of 3 to 7 top wide receivers, running backs, whatever. I like this week. I like this weekend. I like Mac Jones this weekend
Oh wow.
against the Jets.
Oh
Look,
yeah.
last week the Finns are great. Their defense is great. That's what um, Byron Jones came to Miami for defense. In his first ever game in the NFL, Mac Jones had 281 yards. They almost won. He had 2 touchdowns.
Right.
Now he plays the Jets. The Jets, you know, kind of the same neighborhood as the Colts, the Panthers, or less. I don't think the Jets win more than 3 games this year. Jets are going to get clobbered, and Bill Belichick loves beating on the Jets
Yep.
year over year. I do think Mac Jones proves his worth. 320 yards, 3 touchdowns. Belichick goes wild. Mac Jones goes wild. And everybody next week are going to be talking about, hey, who is the best quarterback coming out of this past draft, really, as far as stats is concerned. Maybe down the line it'll be Trevor Lawrence. But for this year, for fantasy, which is what we're in charge of here, it'll be Mac Jones over Trey Lance. And if Justin Fields played, he would have been number one. But yeah, Mac Jones, 320 yards, 3 TDs versus the New York Jets. What do you think?
I agree with that, but let me throw another quarterback out there that'll have a big week, I believe. David Carr from the Las Vegas Raiders. They're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, who beat up on Buffalo, but I believe the Steelers will get out to lead, and David Carr will have throw his way back in the game.
That's good,
And I
interesting. Yeah.
and I think I don't know if they'll win, but it will produce big fantasy numbers because he'll be throwing the ball a lot. And I agree with Matthew Stafford. I think he'll do phenomenal this weekend, and Russell Wilson. Because first of all, the Seattle home opener, the Seahawks are that much tougher at home than on the road, and Russell Wilson just throws a beautiful deep ball. I mean, one of the best deep balls. He also reminds you of Jeff Blake, from Cincinnati Bengals, the shaking Blake. But he has a beautiful deep ball.
Russell Wilson, though, is much better than Jeff Blake.
But yeah, but I mean, but Jeff Blake had a beautiful deep ball too. I mean, he didn't always connect, but he did have a good deep ball. And instead of Mac Jones might be a good pick, but I'd put in David Carr just because he showed what he showed last what he showed on Monday night, and
That was a phenomenal game, by the
yeah,
way.
it was Monday night or Sunday, Monday night
That
or
was the
Sunday,
Monday night game.
Monday
Yes.
night game. and I think he will show up the Steelers again. I think I won't be shocked if the Raiders beat the Steelers. So that'd be my upset of the week. And Mac Jones, they will beat the Jets, but I don't think he will have to go nuts to do that. I think the running game and good defense will contain the Jets.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Jets only win a few games this year. And you're right. If Belichick wants to be conservative and still beat the Jets, Mac Jones will have the same similar numbers of last week: 280 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're correct. I just think that it's going to be his coming out party, and I
Okay,
think Mac Jones comes out and guns a blazing, and has plenty of weapons around him. And New
right.
England is better than last year, and I think he goes big this weekend for sure.
I I hope you're right because that's another quarterback. It's another. I like the Patriots, and I hope that Mac Jones is the answer to replace Tom Brady in New England, just because I'm a fan of Belichick. I'm a fan of a smart winning coach and a fan of a system. So I hope Mac Jones is the answer, long term answer for after Tom Brady left to move to Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and I kind of figured that they were doing something like that when they drafted Mac Jones. To kind of have Cam in the play for a little bit. I didn't think they'd actually release Cam, but I thought,
Right.
Belichick is not, a spring chicken. He's here to win now, and I think that we almost saw it coming that Mac would be the starter. With that being said, I'm going to close it out, and I want to ask you just a few predictions here. First of all, our squad here: Bengals, Bears, Chicago this weekend. Score and who wins.
I think the score will be 21-10 Cincinnati. Um, I think I think Andy Dalton will start. Justin Fields will play a little bit, but with the two quarterback system, no one get comfortable, and the Bengals shut down Montgomery, and I just think it might be a close game for maybe 3 quarters, and the Bengals pull away and 21-10 Cincinnati. How about
Yeah.
you?
I like a 24-17 win by the Bengals. It could either be a 24-17 win by the Bengals or 24-21. I can tell you two things that can happen. One, we got the most underrated kicker in the NFL. He can hit from 60 yards out, Evan McPherson. So let's just settle it with this. We're going to have the Bears leading most of the game. Jamar Chase is going to tie it up, and we're going to have 17-17 going into the fourth quarter. Back and forth. Nobody can score. Evan McPherson scores with it 2 minutes left. Final score: Cincinnati Bengals 20, Chicago Bears 17. Bengals start out 2-0.
Halo with that.
And with that being said, folks, uh, our platform's coming soon to you. You guys are going to love it. It's much different than what you're used to on the major players out there. And we look forward to our next podcast, and we'll give you some new tips for next week. Have a great
Sounds
night.
good. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.